My computer keeps freezing, so I'm using my phone. Apologies.
No, you're perfectly okay. Peter Coffin is a journalist with over 250,000 YouTube subscribers, podcaster, and author. In their book, Custom Reality and You, they explore a world where profit is the driving force. I was telling the audience, when I worked for Sputnik, I went into that job not exactly knowing what I was going into. They had brought me on for like a year or so where I would give commentary, just political commentary. Nobody ever pushed me. Nobody ever said, hey, you need to go and say this. I never had a conversation with Vladimir Putin, none of that nonsense. But that was the way
What a
people
shame.
talked about it. Yeah, right. I know, right? I mean, that would have actually been a cool thing. I would have loved to go to Russia. But either way, I went into that and I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna keep my channel just in case. Meaning if I feel like I'm being pressured, if I feel like I'm being pushed in a particular direction or maneuver, I can always leave. I can always call it a day, call it quits. That never really happened. And what I realized was what they do, if you talk about Sputnik and RT, they've realized that the West has built itself up on so many lies that they only need to just tell the truth. Like it's just, all right,
Yeah.
what's the reality of the story? Just tell that. And so what the West is calling propaganda is effectively opposition, but the opposition is not necessarily wrong. The only time we used to get, when they used to go after us was if we screw something up, if we got a fact wrong, if we got a topic wrong. Because from their point of view, it's like, dude, we need you to get this right because they're going to say that this is propaganda and that you're just making it up. We need to be able to attend ourselves to what is true in a way that combats all of this nonsense about propaganda or misinformation and everything else. Basically, your job is to get it right. Well, I was good with that. I had no issue. Like, from my point of view, I was like, good. That's what I want to do anyway. We're good. What they don't quite get is that they have come up with so many untruths, lies, disinfo, where the media seems to be organizing itself around foreign policy objectives, that just calling it out is enough. I don't need to make it up. I can just point out, hey man, there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Trump wasn't working with the Russians. Hey, the Russians didn't blow up their own pipeline. Like you could, like one issue after the next, one issue after the next, or for that matter, the CNN piece where what's the woman's name? I was covering the story where she goes to Syria. She comes across an inmate in a cell. They blow open the cell with a gun, meaning they shoot it open. And she goes in and talks to the person, and the guy's surprised. Going, oh, oh, oh. Now, despite the fact that they emptied out the prison 5 days prior to this, despite how weird it is that they use a gun to open the door where clearly they had keys for because they had already opened up the jail cells, the weirdness of the guy not hearing a gunshot go off a few feet from his head, and he's surprised when they walk into, like, all of this stuff was just nonsense. CNN gets called for staging the piece. And she comes out and tries to explain, well, we didn't know, we got the name wrong, blah, like all of these excuses. It's like, but dude, you ran this story with this clear notion that, this was Assad's brutal prison system. Here's a guy that was in there for months. He had never seen the light of day, all this stuff. You got all of that stuff wrong. Like, it's like, we don't need to lie. The only thing we need to do is just tell the truth. I'm sorry, Peter. I had started in a particular direction in regards to the story that came out. It says RT is winning the cognitive war. Tim Davies told lawmakers that the British state broadcaster needs more money to compete with Russia and China. That's astonishing. RT is not a huge media organization.
No, it's not a big operation.
No, it's not.
But like,
give me a take on this. Why do you think they're winning the cognitive war, if that's indeed what they want to call it?
Well, I think you really nailed it a minute ago in saying, you really don't have to do a lot, but tell the truth. And it's like unique and novel at this point. I was going to bring up the CNN hoax that you were talking about. And I can't. It's so brazenly, obviously fake. Like it's not even a good fake, like by comedy skit standards. Like it's something you would see on SNL or Mad TV in the 1990s, making fun of the government lying about something. You know what I mean? It's such a, it was so unbelievably bad. Like it was like, I could do better than that. Like if I, yeah, you're muted. I couldn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry. It's like I can come up with a fake video that's better than that video. It
Well,
was
yeah.
sloppy.
I mean, I've made VFX shots for stuff. Like in particular, nowadays I use AI to make music videos. I have a band called That Darn Racket. I make music videos, and
Do you?
I mean, you're
Badass.
capable of making something good, like, or at least not terrible. And it's, I mean, I almost feel like I'm talking way down from where the seriousness of this is, because the implications of it are absolutely insane. But at the same time, it's like, this is what you're doing. Like, you're CNN. You allegedly have resources beyond any other news network. Like, the reason that you're supposed to be credible is, I mean, technically you should have the resources to fake this kind of a thing. Like, part of the reason we trust these large news organizations is the connections and the budgets. And I'm not saying I trust them, but they're allegedly why we're supposed to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
They supposedly have resource, they have money, they have equipment, they have the ability to travel, they have the ability to move quickly, they have all these connections. And you're telling me that that's the best you can do is put a guy behind a door, pretend to shoot the door open, and he's like, oh my God, thank you for coming to save me. I've been locked in this abandoned building for who knows how long. It's okay, so why aren't you dehydrated and dead, sir? Like, that'd be the first interview question I have.
He was overweight and overweight.
Yes, he was not in there alone for an extended period of time. That's for sure.
He said, I hadn't seen the sunlight in 4 months. There was a window in the cell. He manicured nails, nice jacket, haircut. Like, it's like, so Assad's prisons had barbers and manicures that, periodically went through to make sure that, even though he was a brutal dictator, at the very least, he was making sure that people's nails and clothing and everything else was on point. It's like, come on, that's outrageous.
It's been weeks since I've been in the hair and makeup department. It's terrible.
Right. Right. It is so bizarre. I was trying to find the video. I'm sorry. I was pulling up the video because it's so outrageous. And then she has to come out and has to come to Jesus with Jake Tapper. And in the come to Jesus with Jake Tapper, she's like, well, Jake, I mean, we he told us Clarissa Ward, that's her name. Well, he gave us the wrong name. He didn't tell us the right information. We did our research in Holmes and we found out later. And it's like, just stop lying. You got fact checked. That's what it was.
It's fine if we can fact check Trump with anything he says, even true things. But if we get caught in something that's a lie, and this isn't to say that Trump doesn't lie like incessantly, he does. Yeah. Like,
but it's CNN just like has one job, and their job is to get it right. And like you said, they have all the resources in the world. CNN can show up. You had CNN reporters that invaded Kursk when the Ukrainian military invaded Kursk. Like, these people are all over the world. And yet, you come up with this nonsense. I mean, look at this picture. This is one of the images from that story where he comes out and he's looking up at the sky, despite the fact that apparently he hadn't seen the sunlight in like 6 months. I mean, it doesn't even look real. It's so ridiculous.
Like, it keeps setting off my like comedy brain because I come from like video comedy. I was a comedian on YouTube long before I was doing like political stuff. And like all it does, it sets that off in my head. It's like, this is the most ridiculous. And it's not like I'm surprised or anything. I'm not. I feel almost like I'm conveying surprise. It's not surprise.
I'm surprised at how bad it is. Honestly, I was surprised at how bad it was.
It's surprised that they couldn't do better than that. Like if you wanted to make this story about a prisoner who was left in the prison, there's like a large number of things you could have done that would come off better than this. And it displays a lack of sense about like what people are willing to accept as real. Like, well, I would normally be talking about how the media is sort of tricking us and lying to us and withholding important information. But here it's just like, you don't have to say that. It's as clear as the nose on my face, and it's a very clear nose. Clearly, it's not a small one. You're not going to miss it.
It's funny.
I can't. It's shocking to me how not shocking it is. I guess that's kind of what it is. It's so bizarrely like past the line. Like, I'm not questioning if this is fake. Nobody is. Nobody sees this story and goes, well, I don't know, could be real. I feel like it's not possible.
It's so bad. Like, it's so bad. This is when she takes him out the prison cell. And he's looking up at the sky, looking up at the sun. I mean, and
it's
Twitter,
so badly acted. It's so bad.
Twitter fact checks it immediately. They fact check it immediately. And then you get another organization that fact checks it on top of that fact check. And at that point, CNN, I was looking for the video where Leslie Stahl goes on, not Leslie Stahl, Clarissa Ward goes on Jake Tapper because she has explained herself. I mean, the entire media space was pointing out this story is so fake. How is it this fake, et cetera, et cetera. And so she goes on and has to explain herself. Like, it's so bad. And I guess that was the part that shocked me more than anything else. For CNN, they get fact checked, and all around the world, everybody points out this story is staged. That is deeply humiliating.
It is.
What's her name? Leslie Stahl came out and said the trusted media is being degraded. And she said, she was mad at Elon Musk because Elon Musk effectively said legacy media is dead. And as I was pointing out, it's dead because of stuff like that.
Yep.
Good job. I
mean, last time you and I talked, we talked a lot about the ways in which that they have lied about Trump. Like I recently re-edited our conversation and put it up on my YouTube channel because it contained a lot of good examples of this specific thing. Like, they've done so much to undermine trust in the media. And, last year I was in Portland with Caleb Maupin and CPI. That's the Center for Political Innovation. And I was talking in front of a lot of people about how they're trying to sell like the fake aspects of the media as people are like, they say things like media literacy is at an all-time low.
Right.
And it's like, no, us not believing you is at an all-time high. And it keeps getting higher. It's not that we're illiterate. We know what you're doing. That's the problem for you, actually. You know? And it's clear that, like, if this is the level they're going to do this, it's almost so bad. I wonder if it's like this bad on purpose to like set up some kind of the whole media has to come to Jesus. And now suddenly we're going to work at being very credible because we know how bad it's gotten. We're so sorry. I almost wonder if it's like that fake. You know what I mean? Like, for them to be able to set up something obvious and apologize for it, it's that bad. Like, it's such a bad thing. It almost seems on purpose.
But they don't seem to, like, do you remember, I forget what's the woman who's on, I think she's on either CNN or MSNBC. I think she's on CNN. And she's on like Jimmy Kimmel or something like that. And she says, well, obviously media, we get it right. And the audience just laughed at her. And she's looking at the audience like, why are you laughing at that?
Yeah, it was Colbert. It was Colbert. It was she was from CNN too. Yeah. And she was talking about bias. And I believe she said something along the lines, or no, Colbert said to her, you are supposed to be non-biased or something in the vein of that. And the audience just erupted in laughter. And this woman, she goes, or in Colbert, he goes, I didn't understand that was supposed to be a laugh line, but apparently it is.
Yeah. I mean, but think about that. Like, the entire audience laughs. Then, like, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to talk to each other in order to come to a consensus on whether or not this is. No, they laughed because from their point of view, well, bias. Obviously, they're biased. Like that, it was like the audience just knew in a gut level. I found the clip. This is a clip where she has to explain herself to Jake Tapper.
Oh,
Because after all, it's humiliating. And keep in mind, Clarissa Ward has gotten caught a few times faking stories. Clarissa Ward, in fact, was the one who she wrote this piece, or there was a piece that she wrote where she was saying effectively that, and I'm using the term radicalized during the Syrian war, where she thought the Obama administration wasn't doing enough. That she's like, it's not that I'm saying that they need to overthrow the government, but, kind of saying they need to overthrow the government. And she was sending like dirty letters to people in the Obama administration on the fact that they didn't overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Like, that's the person who's going over there. That's who Clarissa Ward is. So she has to explain herself. She was the one with the chemical bags where they were supposed to be a chemical weapon strike in Syria. She was smelling the book bag. She was like, is this the book bag? That's it. Ooh, this smells like anthrax. This smells like chemical weapons. Like, it was stuff like that. Or throwing her body to the ground, saying, oh my God, they're firing on us. And her and the cameraman were laying on the ground. They were still filming, and come to find out it was fake. She's made stuff up before. So she has to go on Jake Tapper and explain, how did you guys screw this up to this degree and humiliate yourself in this network on this level? I want to get your take on the way she tries to describe this. I was yelling at this video the other day because I was like, dude, don't play this like you just did additional investigation and you found out as you investigated further, you got fact checked. That's what it was. Let's play the clip.
So what do we know about this man now?
Well, Jake, obviously from the minute we witnessed this astonishing moment, we're trying to dig up more information on this prisoner. We weren't able to find anything with the name he gave us, Adel Khurbal. But in the days after our report aired, CNN started talking to people in the city of Homs who told us that his real name is, in fact, Salama Mohammed Salama.
Again, that's not something they found. That was something the fact check found. This is what's, God, man, this story is annoying the hell out of me. The fact check found that out. CNN didn't figure that out. And do you think for a moment that they would have went back over the story if indeed they weren't fact checked? Meaning, would this have been a story that they just would have hit and they would have moved on and they would have went to whatever new propaganda piece that they were going for? They got dragged back to the story because they found that they screwed it up. That's my take. Let me just finish this clip.
He is reportedly a lieutenant in the Air Force Intelligence Directorate. He is also known as Abu Hamza. He was known to run Air Force intelligence checkpoints in the city of Homs. He's accused of extorting and harassing people. And we have now been able to corroborate the information those residents gave us with a photograph of Salama. And it's clear that far from being an ordinary guy, as he presented himself to be, he was a part of Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime who somehow found himself in prison. We don't know why he was arrested. The fact-checking website Verify SY has said that he was held in the prison where we found him for 1 month because of some kind of a disagreement over profit sharing of extorted funds with a higher-ranking officer.
I'm so annoyed by this story, Peter. You have no idea. Because
man, anybody who has any kind of relationship with that woman in real life, oof, I would. That's a lying ass bitch right there. I'm sorry. Holy shit! I haven't seen that clip, but whoa.
She is trying to walk this like we continue to do our research, and as we did our research, we talked to all of these people in Homs, and we found out that he had this name and blah blah blah. You got fact checked. That's it. You got fact checked. Call it a day. You got it wrong.
To me, it sounds. It really sounds like the really belligerent person getting caught cheating, justifying it. Like that's. Yeah. I'm not even joking. That's. I've had that conversation with people in my past, and that's the vibe that I like is immediately coming to me. So,
gaslighting vibe out of it. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Jake Tapper just sits there and let her explain it.
Yeah.
And Jake Tapper just sitting there, just let her. Like, I would imagine that somebody told Jake to say, "Hey, Jake, this looks bad for us. We need you to have a conversation with Clarissa Ward to try to, make this okay." And everybody else had been talking about the story. Like, the story had been all over. In which case, they probably had to drag her back to explain, how did you fuck this up so bad? How did you fuck this up so bad? Like,
Well, do you remember when Brian Williams got caught lying?
Yes.
They tarred and feathered that guy and just sent him on his merry way. The fact that he got back into the media was like shocking to people because, I would even say that his lie wasn't as bad. It's just like, this is just ridiculous.
What he said, he was being shot at on a helicopter or something?
He was claiming to be shot at, I believe. I can't remember whether it was missiles or bullet fire, but it was one of the two. And they were out on a helicopter, which, again, the reason you're supposed to trust the media is because they have resources like helicopters that they can take out to a news place. And so it sounds like it was something, I think, that did kind of shake credibility a bit. It was something that kind of got a little close to the reasons why they're supposed to be credible. It makes you go, every time you hear like news reporter and a chopper in the Middle East now, it does conjure that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I would say that this is worse because now I feel like every single time it's going to be a meme. You know what I mean? This is going to turn into a meme. It's so silly. Like, it's outwardly like a comedy sketch, like a bad Lonely Island sketch. Or a good one. I don't know.
But she didn't get fired for that, though.
No.
What does it mean that she didn't get fired for that? Like, that's a big deal. I mean, they effectively staged a prison scene. And keep in mind, this wasn't isolated. CNN had been doing stories like puff pieces on Al-Jilani, like for a while. Like, oh, he just went through a head chopping phase, but he's evolved as a person. And he realizes that, chopping off heads disenfranchises the civil rights of the person whose head he chopped off. Like, it's like, okay, dude, why are you giving me this puff piece of this guy that's clearly a terrorist? But they were. But again, this goes back to my point. This idea of foreign policy shaping the media space, meaning media and foreign policy working hand in hand in order to affect the narrative as it goes forward. She was just following the context of what CNN was doing prior with that other interview, which may explain why they didn't get rid of her in the first place. I mean, what does it mean that they don't get rid of somebody who does something like this?
I don't know. I'm drawing a parallel to the Biden campaign. It was crisis of legitimacy. Like, they had two options. They could either admit that they were lying about his cognitive decline, or they could continue to lie, which they knew people weren't buying. And up until that debate, they were just choosing, we're going to keep lying. We're just going to keep lying. It's going to be fine. The American people are stupid. They are subservient. Our personal base is fine with whatever we say. It doesn't matter at all how absurd it is. They will support us anyway. And then the crisis of legitimacy that they created just reached such a height that they couldn't not address it. But the problem is that the alternative was admitting that they were lying, which they didn't directly do, but in taking him out of the race, they did. Like, ultimately, that is admitting that you are lying about this. And unfortunately, what that does, it doesn't reconcile the lie. It just legitimizes the fact that you're not legitimate. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the Brian Williams response was probably the correct response, where they fired him. This is probably not. Like, as much as, like, yeah, she's going along with them and she's keeping up their foreign policy narratives, and that's ultimately their goal, clearly, they need to at least symbolically act like, and that's why I would say, I was saying earlier, it's like this is an intentional thing. It's that bad, so that they're able to do a truth and reconciliation, come to Jesus thing. That was kind of a joke. I think that they've done the wrong thing here, like in not firing her, in trying to not legitimize, but excuse or justify. Mm-hmm. I think that they're ultimately pulling the same move the Democrats did with Biden, which is just it's effectively doubling down until you can't double down. And then when you take it back, it hurts you more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But they've never had consequences for lying. I mean, the weapons of
No.
mass destruction in Iraq thing. I mean, do you remember, what is her name? It was a New York Times reporter. And she was getting, Dick Cheney was one of her sources. And you had the situation where Dick Cheney would give her information. She would publish it anonymously. So she doesn't tell you who the source is. And then Dick Cheney would come out and reference the New York Times. Well, the New York Times said so-and-so. Nobody knowing that Dick Cheney was referencing himself for the New York Times. Judith Miller, I believe. Like even that, you would think would be just devastating to credibility. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, you would think that would be devastating. Them getting rid of the Hunter Biden laptop thing, saying, oh, this is Russian disinformation. You would think that would be devastating. Trump working with the Russians. Like, all of these are stories that they just got fundamentally wrong. And at no point were there consequences for getting it wrong. And I'm glad you brought up the Biden thing. So a report came out yesterday that pointed out that Joe Biden's cognitive decline started on day one, that they knew about it from jump, and that his people around him was doing any and everything in their power to effectively protect Joe Biden from being exposed as being cognitively not up to snuff to do the job. Just astonishing. They were saying how people would change schedules. They would alter, like they would say, oh, well, Joe Biden is not necessarily in his right mind today. He'll be better tomorrow. So we'll switch this event, this meeting, this program to the next day on a better day where the president is more stable. They would be insulated. So who would talk to the president? Those type of things were hid from the outside world. But that's just it, though. Everybody knew that Joe Biden wasn't necessarily there in his right mind. I want to give you, let me see, do I still have this up? So I want to play this clip, and I want to get your take on this, because I think Scott Jennings is right here. He eviscerates CNN, basically making the same argument that you did. One of the biggest scandals has been the fact that they hid Joe Biden's cognitive fitness, that the president wasn't cognitively there enough to do the job. He wasn't qualified in a mental sense to do the job, or for them, not even physical, to do the job, and that the media and the political space hid it from the American public.
America, and the level and volume of people who dedicated themselves to lying to everyone at home about this man's condition for 4 straight years up through this summer is breathtaking. It's a scandal of epic proportions. And it's a fair question to ask, who is running the country? Who has been running the country? And as I said earlier, if you're worried about Donald Trump's advisors having influence, for the last 4 years, apparently this president, duly elected, but this president was not capable of fulfilling the duties of the office. And his staff and the White House lied about it and kept it from the American people.
By the way, not just the staff, the media. The media. If you remember, anytime somebody would say something, they would say, well, that's fake news. Those are deep fakes. You can't say that about the president. And then the day after the debate, media was shell-shocked. And they were like, oh my God, we were lied to. And it's like, what do you mean you were lied to?
No, you lied. You were the liars.
Like, how did everybody else in the country know, but the device in the country that was supposed to be the news were completely unaware that the president was out of his mind? I mean, some of them legitimately looked like they were shocked. And it's like, what the hell is wrong? Like, how does the thing that is supposed to be the one in the know not know? Just bizarre.
Well, if you remember, I continually said they're going to leave Biden in the race. And the reason I said that is because the alternative, actually acknowledging that they've been lying, is catastrophic in terms of their credibility. And it's unfortunate for them that there was an incident that forced them to address that. If they had not had that debate, if that was not something that happened, or that happened earlier in the day and he didn't come off so badly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to be funny, but I cracked my happened earlier in the day. Just make sure that's before 4 p.m. Sorry, I derailed myself there.
Oh, by the way, they pointed that out in Article 2 that
Yeah.
they had to schedule his meetings at a certain time of day because the president wasn't necessarily right in the mind at a particular time of
Yeah,
day.
exactly. But like the thing is, if they had not had that event that forced them to reckon with it, the media would have stayed like, nah, he's not cognitive decline. Like they would have cherry picked clips of him saying things that are vaguely coherent up until the election, and you know, ultimately they had to. They couldn't not take him out of the race. They couldn't not address him the way that they were addressing him on the media. But that's the only reason that it changed. It's not because they were shocked by anything. That's fucking ridiculous. Anybody who thinks that is so naive that these people couldn't see that. Like, you could see that man talk, and not even from the start of his presidency, during the campaign, during the previous campaign. There were times where it was questionable whether he was, I mean, he was a lot better. I'm not going to say he was not a lot better, you know, years prior when he was stumping for Hillary Clinton. He was a lot better, but there were times when he was stumping, you could even tell this isn't the Joe Biden of the Obama administration. This isn't the Joe Biden of previous Senate activities, et cetera, et cetera. You could tell that he was slowing down over time, and it just accelerated over the last 4 or 5 years. And, you know, the idea that no one saw that, no, everyone saw that. Like Democrats, Republicans, everybody saw that. And it's absurd. It is an absolutely absurd prospect that the media wasn't aware, or that the Democrats weren't aware. Like, the reckoning that they had to do only happened because they had to do it. I was so steadfast in the idea that they were keeping him in, specifically because lying was the only option that kept them more credible than the truth.
So I agree and I disagree. Like, ideology matters, and it's very like I let me ask you this. I think Democrats around him couldn't. I don't think they cared one way or the other. I think they would have accepted either way, right? They were
Yes.
like, okay, he's out of his mind, but you know, even if he's a corpse, we'll take that corpse over Donald Trump. So you were going to get 50, 60 million people who would have voted for a corpse either way.
Sure.
So let's put that to the side. Media, however, I do think some of them really did believe that all of this was made. Like, I really do think some of these guys work with blinders on, and that they're so either ideologically shaped that for some reason they don't see what everybody else sees. Like, because I used to often think, okay, are they lying or are they just comically delusional? I'm beginning to think that some of them are lying. I think some are comically delusional.
I completely agree. I think it's a mix as well. I think that there are people who are just, it is absurd, the world that they live in at this point. It's
because they literally, some of them like seem outright shocked. Like they were like, just like, oh my God, we've been lied to. It's like there's gambling in the establishment. And it's like, dude, what have you been like? What have you been looking at? What have you been watching? Like, some of these people are political actors and they don't care. Agreed, 1000%. Some of the people in media, they are in the know, meaning they know that the president is not altogether there, but they want Joe Biden to win, so they're okay with it. They run with it. Some of them, especially at the questioning, like at the White House or at the questioning in the State Department where they were talking to Karine Jean-Pierre, they seemed fundamentally shocked. They could be great actors, but I suspect that they are just delusional, and that's the headspace that they operate in. Something that everybody could see, and I guess that's indicative of something that everybody in this country could see, except the people who are supposed to be able to see it. Just amazing.
Well, let's talk about, you know, yes, obviously there are people in these organizations that are liars. Like, you can't accomplish this without some liars.
Clarissa Ward.
But who's the best person to hire? More liars or some naive idiots that will go along with things because they think that it sounds credible and they aren't going to go against it unless, you know, something happens. You know what I mean? I think like these people, they benefit from hiring people who aren't that inquisitive or are just overall dumb even. I mean, that's part of why the news is as bad as it is. A lot of the things we see are I go, wow, how are you this dumb? How do you not get what's going on here? Like, you see these reporters reporting on things, and they seem like vaguely confused as to the events that are going on. I'm not saying this is the norm. It's not. I think, but there's times, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but there's times I can recall.
I can give you a perfect example. Sanders, Sanders was being interviewed by Washington Post. And you know, where they had the sit down thing and one of the reporters, I guess he thought he had a got you question. And he says, hey, you were like in South America or something. And Sanders, okay. And he says, somebody had a sign that said like death to America or F America or something like that. And Sanders looked at him, he says, do you realize that we were paying kill squads to go murder and knock down governments? Why wouldn't they feel some kind of way? Like, the reporter was completely just blissfully unaware of the history of it, or couldn't put himself in the context of somebody who's in another country, who's at the blunt end of the boot of America, who's trying to overthrow their governments or destroying their governments outright, completely oblivious. And the idea that Sanders has to say, so they're wrong for feeling that way when they know as a flat fact that America is overthrowing and toppling their governments. I mean, look at Iran, for example. When Brits in America decided, all right, Iran needs some more freedom because they want to use more of their oil revenue. Okay, well, yeah, maybe they would have some kind of feelings about the fact that we overthrew their government and put in a dictator, a Shah, that we backed all the way through. Why wouldn't they feel some kind of way? It's like they take, I used to call it an American point of view, an American perspective. They put an American spin on everything and the way that they report the news. And it often, especially when it's foreign policy, there's a heavy spin on it. It's like anything that Russia does has to be bad. Even if it's something good, you have to add something bad to it in order to make it sound okay. Same thing with China. Same thing with Iran. Same thing with our enemies. Saudi Arabia, however, less so, despite the fact it's a dictatorship. Every bit as much as Iran, right? Like, it's very weird in the way that they do their media. And that's what I mean when I say I often can't figure out, are they this ideologically twisted? Or are they lying? And I'm part of me thinks that they're ideologically twisted.
I think that I think that if I were an apparatus that were attempting to justify a certain point of view, I'm not even going to specify. I think that the best people to hire at the most public facing level would be the least likely people to question me.
Agreed. Agreed.
Because A, I'm paying them, and B, they don't know better. Like,
yeah,
I feel like they're probably better off having a few smarter people like Jake Tapper in certain positions, and a few people who are just kind of like, they know that they're not going to question things because they don't really know any better, or they are very naive or trickable even. Like, in some ways, you almost feel sorry for it, but then you also remember what they're ultimately justifying.
Right. Yeah, I don't feel sorry for him. Like, Jake Tapper knows. Tulsi Gabbard, when she was on Jake Tapper's, and she pointed out, she said, Jake, we're supporting terrorists in Syria, Jake. And Jake says, the government says they're not doing that. It's like, okay, yeah, Jake, but regardless, it was like, do you know that the government lies, Jake? Like, certainly they have to know. Like, even that, they act like they don't quite understand that government's
Jake Tapper's smarter. He's not. I guarantee you, on the lists of people we're talking about, he's not on the dumb one.
Yeah, he knows. He knows.
Yeah,
Jake Tapper's aware. He just would never tell. No, man, this stuff is fascinating. And so I guess the main thesis, to take it back to the beginning, if they do indeed believe that RT Sputnik is winning the cognitive war, it has nothing to do with RT and Sputnik. It has everything to do with them.
Yes, 100%. Not even a question. You are completely, like, without saying any other words. It's not even controversial. Like, I don't think that you see all these people who are angry at, like, Elon Musk for saying that X is the media now. You are the media now, he keeps saying. I mean, to some extent it's true, because at least the people on X or Twitter or whatever, I prefer calling it Twitter. I'm sorry.
I like Twitter. I don't use X. Yeah.
It's those people are at least inquisitive and they're willing to look into things. They don't necessarily have the same kind of resources that they would have if they were a traditional media outlet, but they're much more curious. And that's journalism, like asking the question, is this real? That's journalism. When we were talking about Jake Tapper, does he know the government lies? Of course he knows the government lies. He's too smart not to know that the government lies. He's going along with it because that's his job and he knows that's his job. They're not all like him. But the point is, if you have a bunch of curious people who are willing to spend their time looking into things, you are eventually going to be shown what is real. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be an easy process, again, because the resources aren't necessarily there. A lot of people on Twitter are also very ideology poisoned themselves.
Yes,
but if you have people that are skeptical and curious and trying, eventually it's going to come out. I mean, you have exceptions in terms of like what is classified and what is not possible to get until, Freedom of Information Act requests are made, things like that. But, they'll make them, eventually. People will eventually want to know what happened to the point where it can't sustain itself. And, the thing is, if the media, the legacy media, I would almost stop calling it the legacy media, because there's a lot of, what you would call new media outlets that have been acquired by what you would call legacy media. I would almost call it just like establishment or corporate media or whatever you would want. The corporate media, it is ultimately attempting to do something specific, and you can tell. And that's the reason why they're losing. Like, the reason why Trump won, we pointed that out, the ways that they've lied about reporting. It's not that Trump is good or doesn't lie. It's that the ways that they've pointed out that he is saying something bad and it turns out to be something completely different from what they're saying, that undermines them on a level that nothing Trump could say could undermine them. Like, it doesn't matter how many times he starts talking about how they're fake news. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Like, that is an ideological statement, and people who like him are going to believe that. But when you are shown to provably be lying about what you are saying is real, is reality, that's when it starts to break down. You introduce me every time and bring up my book, Custom Reality, and you about how reality is servicing profits. That is ultimately like what we're talking about here. But profits are sometimes serviced by agenda that maybe isn't profitable ultimately. You have situations in which, like the diplomatic situation or the context of who is involved or whatever, it's more important to say something that is ultimately damaging to somebody or that covers up some other thing. And these things aren't ultimately like directly tied to profit in any way, but they continue the justification of the existence of something that makes profit. And like the way that we exploit, not we obviously, but the way that our country and its capital exploits countries in Africa for cobalt for computers and stuff like that. That stuff, it ends up being very ancillary to what the narrative is. And the narrative might not have anything itself to do with profit. It might have something to do with just keeping us off of this topic or keeping us away from that thing. Like the Luigi Mangione stuff, for instance. I think this is an example of, there's a lot of people who I think are correctly skeptical over whether this guy is the actual killer of that guy. And I'm not saying that I believe that or don't believe it. I think that there is some evidence, like there's a photo of this man in a lobby somewhere where his eyebrows are like this far away and Luigi's are like this far away. And I think it does raise questions. I think people are right for being skeptical of those things, but we can't know that because these establishment people, whether they are the state in terms of all of these, like you saw them parading him around yesterday like a Batman villain. That was totally insane.
Eric Adams meets him apparently. Eric Adams was like, I wanted to look him in the eye. You committed terrorism on my city. It's like, okay, dude, calm down. Go back to
they're simultaneously making him both a martyr and a supervillain. And I feel like they're doing it on purpose. But then you also think about that in context with the story we're talking about now. how many in the media are just kind of hired to go along with that? Like, oh, this guy's a bad guy, so I'm going to talk about him like a bad guy. Like, I get it. He's bad. So it really undermines our trust in everything. Like, we can't trust anything that they say if they're willing to do something this outwardly stupid. This prisoner situation, it's outwardly insane to believe that a normal person would see that story and be like, that, yeah, I believe that. That's real.
But they make it like a supervillain. And it's like, he shot a guy in the back.
Yeah.
People get shot every day. I mean, I think their issue more than anything else is the public is so excited about the fact that he murdered a CEO. And I think it freaks them out.
It's Joker. He's the Joker, baby.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's what it is. Like, I'm writing a documentary right now that is actually framing the Luigi situation through both Joker 1 and 2. Because it's that. And the whole idea is to create this situation where there's two sides that either support him or don't support him. Like they've hyped him up to the point of almost a fetish with a lot of the leftists, because he's not an ugly man at all. He's a pretty good looking guy. And they have used that to develop a fandom. They've and then the other side, they've made him into, like, they're portraying him like frickin' they caught Bane. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's very deliberate, and it's obviously a developing situation. I don't have a conclusion to give you on that, but I see the plot of the Joker in this. Like, he killed those Wall Street guys on the subway. He killed Murray Franklin on TV. Like, they've made him into a folk hero in a certain way, in the same way that the Joker was made into a folk hero in his world. It's very, like, it's bizarre to me how similar it is, actually.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess I didn't even think of it. Believe it or not, I haven't seen the Joker, either 1 or 2. I heard 2 was horrible. I heard 1 was really good.
Well, people hate the second one because it actually it finishes the point that the first one was making, and people didn't realize it.
Fair enough. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, I think the elites look at him and they think to themselves, the public is very excited about the fact that this guy killed the CEO. Yeah. And I think it weirds them out. I think it freaks them out. Like, there's something fundamentally wrong with the system where the public is like, yeah, that's right. Good job killing that CEO, shooting that guy in the back. And I guess from the elite's point of view, they're like, whoa, why is the public okay with this? Why is the public cheering this on? In normal circumstances, they wouldn't be on board with this. And yet they are cheering the guy on. I think it freaks them out. I think from their point of view, they're like, we need to somehow tamp this down, missing the fact that the more you tamp it down, the less it works. Like, it's one thing if you treat him like a normal convict. They're treating him like a supervillain, which adds on to the mystique associated around.
Well, yeah. And I almost think they're doing it on purpose, because they know that the response every time they keep displaying him this way, they know what the response is, and they keep doing it. So my belief is that there is some degree of, if they hype a certain group up enough to the point where there's significant support for this guy, they don't really have to justify authoritarian shit that they want to do. I feel like that phone call where that woman got arrested for saying, just like referencing it, like that type of a thing is what they're foaming at the mouth to do shit like that. Like, they love the idea of imprisoning people for words. They love it. They absolutely fucking love it. And to have this significant fandom of this supervillain, like this, getting people to like this supervillain, makes it so they don't even have to justify themselves. Like, look at these savages. They think that killing is good. We don't even have to explain why that is bad. We shall just act accordingly. But
I don't think they tried to, I don't think they want people to like this guy. I think it boiled down to the context of the nation. Like, people feel like they're being screwed over. And they feel
yes, absolutely
are being, whether it's health insurance companies, they don't believe that the government is looking out for their best interests, that they won't go to the mat for them. And that for all intents and purposes, people like these CEOs can give a ton of money to keep things exactly the way they are. So there's no political out. Like, in the normal circumstances, the political space is your branch, is your outlet to try to deal with things that are capitalistic, problematic for the main state of the population.
Absolutely.
There's no out. There is no.
I think they benefit though from having the sort of extreme, just a group of people. Like there's a certain group of people that the way that they're portraying him turns him into a folk hero, a godlike figure, and they're aware of it. And I think that they benefit from having that group of people act that way, because the crazier those people can be made to sound, the easier it is to justify whatever it is that they want to do. Like they obviously want to clamp down as hard as they can when somebody's shooting a CEO. Like that terrifies the shit out of them. That's probably like that's
like,
DEFCON 5, you know?
Yeah, we can't let this spread. This is too dangerous. This is spread. We don't want to create little around putting knives in CEOs. No, I agree with you on that. I think that, I guess they're playing you up on some level. And yeah, you're right. The left has fetishized this guy in a way. It's fascinating. It's just, you would think in a functioning society, they would say, whoa, why are people okay with this? And maybe something is going wrong that people are okay with this. Maybe there's some level of injustice that we need to deal with in our society to kind of ameliorate the fact that people are cheering this on.
I mean, the point we started from today, though, was CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Right.
Pulling a guy out of a very fake situation and pretending that our man hadn't seen the light of day.
Yeah.
But apparently he'd seen some Swiss cake rolls like for a while. I feel like, you know, for every ray of sunlight he wasn't allowed to see, he did get a cookie or something.
He was definitely well fed. He was definitely well fed. Peter, man, thank you for this. Always appreciate talking to you, man. Always enjoy these conversations. Always fun. Peter Coffin, journalist with over 250,000 YouTube subscribers, podcaster, and author. In their book, Custom Reality and You, they explore a world where profit is the driving force. You can follow Peter on YouTube and Twitter at Peter Coffin and purchase their book on Amazon.com. My man, thank you for this, Peter. Always appreciate having you, man. Thanks
for having me, man. It's always fun.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.
You too.
Oh.